Welcome along to Steve Wraith's True Crime Podcast, and today's special guest is Vinnie Bradish. How are you, Vinnie?
I'm great, thanks, Steve. I'm great, man. How's yourself?
Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks for joining us, mate. Obviously, I've read a lot about your life and the situations that you found yourself in. First of all, where were you born and where were you brought up, mate?
I was born in Willesden, northwest London, and that's where I was brought up. We used to live on a council estate. There was 9 other brothers and sisters, 5 brothers and 3 sisters. We were all second generation Irish, and that's it. We were brought up there in Willesden, and then we just lived around Willesden most of our life, and then and now I've moved out to Surrey now.
Was it a happy childhood?
Yeah, I was happy. Yeah, most of it was happy. Yeah. We used to have a good crack, just the same thing as most kids do, just running around, getting up to mischief, doing penny for the guy and singing at people's doors at Christmas time and all that kind of stuff. And anything just to earn a few quid, but a few coppers,
What was your
That's
mum
what we
and
was
dad?
doing.
What was your mum and dad like? What jobs were they doing?
Well, my dad worked as a painter and decorator, and he worked in a few factories, like the Rolls-Royce factory. I don't know what he was doing there. And probably nicking the motors, I don't know. But and my mum just worked as a housewife and a cleaner, doing little cleaning jobs to make a few extra quid, and that was it,
So there was money coming into the house. Was it, was your dad a disciplinarian? Was he somebody who was quite strict if you got into trouble?
No, he wasn't really very strict, but we didn't really want to. You didn't want to bring the police to the door, but sometimes it was inevitable, because as youngsters you ended up getting nicked. I didn't start getting nicked until I was about 17 or 18, and so the younger childhood and all that was no problem. And yeah, but my dad wasn't a very strict disciplinarian, and sometimes he would just have a few drinks on a Friday or Saturday night. You would see him staggering up the road. And we would be looking out the window, like my mum would say, "Oh, have a look, see if he's coming." And we'd say, "Yeah, mum, here he comes. He's staggering up the road." So that's the sign that he's drunk, So that means we all got to get out of it, get out of the front room and get in hiding in the bedroom. And then he would come in and start effing and blinding and singing Irish rebel songs and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
And that was it. And the Irish music would be blasting, and that's how he was brought up,
Yeah. It sounds like a happy enough childhood, And a lot of these times when I interview former criminals, you tend to find that there's been a bit of trauma there. There's been a tough upbringing, but it just sounds like an average childhood. You know what I mean? Like, but brothers and sisters and a mum and dad who were both working hard to try and make ends meet and put food on the table. What was it like going to school then? I mean, were you a scholar? Were you somebody who enjoyed school, or were you like me who didn't really like it very much?
I couldn't stand it. I remember it still. I think that traumatized me even going into there. To me, that was like a prison, From when I was a kid, I couldn't stand it. And it's like, I don't know, the amount of times that I've tried to remember what did I learn at school. And all I can remember is writing lines where they were saying, I must do this, I must do that, I must do this, I must follow the orders, blah, 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 or whatever. Because it just seemed to me I couldn't never keep up with what was going on in the class. Whether I was a bit too slow or what, or the teachers weren't explaining it properly or whatever, and I couldn't keep up with them. And so most of the time I'd be going from one lesson to the next, and it's just like I must have became invisible. It was like I made myself invisible. I wanted to make myself invisible to the teachers because I thought I haven't done fuck all, and I thought I ain't got a clue what they're on about. So I thought it's best if I just keep in the background and try and blend in, and hopefully they won't ask me if I've done any work and all that. Because they came over. I used to like writing. I discovered I liked writing, and now as I'm older, I like reading books and stuff. But as a kid in school, I can't remember learning anything, and I did take some exams when I was leaving secondary school, but I never went back for the results, and I didn't expect anything decent from them because I never done any homework. If any homework was ever set for me, like as soon as I left the school, that was it. The books were gone back in the bag or whatever, and I would dump them wherever I did, and I never opened them again until I came back into the class the next day or a few days later, and so maybe if I'd have listened, or I was able to listen to the teachers, but I didn't have a clue basically what they was on about. And even when I was in prison years ago, and I was sitting in I was doing my GCSEs, and I was in Whitemore, high security, Nick, and I remember sitting down doing history, and the teacher waffled on for about 10 minutes, and then she goes, "Is there anyone in here that doesn't understand any of that?" And I thought, well, I'm not going to be like I was when I was a kid. And so I looked around, no one else was saying anything. I goes, "Yeah, me." I goes, "I don't understand that, miss." She goes, "What don't you understand?" I goes, "Anything that you're talking about." I goes, "I haven't got a clue what you're on about." Everyone was roaring their head off in the class, you know. Anyway, it was a good crack. But I thought there we go again. Look, because I don't know whether they've been speaking for too long.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any understanding of the history and all this. If I'd have been studying the history for 1 year or 2 years or something, and then they're talking about something, then I know what they're talking about. Then it would have gone in. But there was no pigeonhole in my head for all this new information to go in. So I couldn't follow what they was on about, and so I just found it hard with all the schoolwork, you know. And then when I was old enough, I would just bunk schooled, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean that's part and parcel of, I suppose, of, you know, you either like school or you don't like school. It's one of them things. I was in a similar position. I didn't play it truant, but I know a lot of people who did, and I just remember my GCSEs sitting looking out the window. Everybody else was scribbling away. I think I got a percentage on most of mine for just writing my name and writing the date of the exam, and that was it. You know, I left school with a couple of GCSEs, but we're not all born to be scholars. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing.
Yeah. Talking of which, like years later now, when I was an adult and I was doing a bit of work for these armed robberies and that, I started reading books and doing all this kind of stuff, and I started doing my GCSEs, and I passed my English and maths, and I just felt delighted when I done it, and I thought this is what was missing for me. I thought I'm missing an education, and so then I started reading more books, and by the time I got out of the Nick, I was reading quite a bit of personal development books with Anthony Robbins, and books on neurolinguistic programming, which I was interested in, and which I still am interested in, and that's all about communication and how we communicate to ourselves and with others, and so but I got into that, and even now I've just started doing a degree in criminology and psychology, because psychology is one of my favourite subjects as well. So I discovered.
It's amazing how many people come back to education later in life. I went back and did a performing arts degree when I was 37, because my dream was always to be an actor when I was a kid, and I went back and did a performing arts degree at 37 and graduated when I was 40. So I'm 48 now, being a professional actor for 8 years, and it's the best thing I did. But you know, when I was younger, it just never. It was something that passed us by. So we can all improve ourselves as we get older. Getting back to the younger days, then, what was your first bit of crime? You know, was it shoplifting? Was it what did you get into at a young age?
I got into shoplifting even on the way back home from school. Like, if I didn't have any money, which was the usual story, I didn't have any money, and so I used to see my mates, my friends, they're going into the shop and they're buying stuff on the way home from school, and I never had no money to buy anything. I thought, this is just fucking ridiculous. How come I've never got any money? And I thought, so next thing, so I would go in the shop when they're going in there buying all their stuff, and I would just stuff my pockets full of all the sweets, you know. And that was it. And so, and then I'd be doing, even then I started getting into shoplifting and breaking into shops, and even I would creep around the back of shops even, or for example at night time, smash the window, and I'd have a stick with a hook on the end of it with nails, and I'd be pulling clothes over to the window and all this kind of stuff, you know. So I'd be doing burglaries like that and breaking into factories and anything where I found I could get some money, then I had my eyes. It's like I had my eyes open for it all day, you know. That was like a job for me.
Did you feel a bit guilty, you know, at that time, or were you? Did you not feel any guilt at all?
No, I never felt no guilt at all. The way I looked at it, I said they've got something that I haven't got, and I thought, and they've got plenty of it, and I thought, so they're not going to miss a bit of it. And I felt the same way about all the banks.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Yeah, that's how I felt about it, you know. So wasn't doing any harm. Like if I was grabbing a handful of sweets out of a shop, or breaking into a warehouse, and the way I looked at it, I said, well, I just thought they've got plenty. They ain't going to miss none of it. And so I wasn't doing any physical harm to anyone, and that was it. So I wasn't concerned.
You talk about physical harm. I mean, were you ever involved in violence at a young age? Where you know, sometimes at school you have to fight. You end up in fights. Were you ever in that kind of situation?
I got into a couple of fights at school, and growing up, just a few fights. I'm not really into violence, and I'm not really a violent person, and so but I got into a few fights, and it was it. I suppose it was a bit of a crack at the time, and then I just forgot all about it. I just carried on with my life, and that was it.
Did you win the fights, Vin?
Mostly we'd end up rolling around on the floor, and people would break them up, and all this kind of stuff. And he got me in a headlock, and I'm holding on to him, trying to squeeze the living daylights out of him, trying to kill him, or he's trying to kill me, one or the other. And but I did get banged up for it once. I got banged up for fighting. I got involved in a fight by accident. A punch up started, and I was with a few people, and a fight started, and a couple of the fellas from the opposing side, there was a few of us and a few of them, and a couple of them got stabbed, and I got found guilty of that, even though I never stabbed them. When they weren't stabbed, they was cut, but I got found guilty of that, and I got sentenced to 18 months for that, for a fray and malicious wounding and ABH. I was charged with for that. And even when I got locked up for that, it was an annoyance, because I thought to myself, fancy getting banged up for fighting. I thought, this is just fucking ridiculous. I used to say to myself, I thought, I'm in here, I was doing 18 months and I haven't even earned a penny out of it, So that was the most annoying thing for me.
Was that the first time that you were arrested and convicted?
No, I had done a few sentences before then. Before that, I had done a detention centre. I got detention centre for, I think it was for theft and assault, and a couple of other minor offences. I got 3 months detention centre for that, and then I got a Borstal training. That was for a burglary and aggravated burglary or something like that, and that was it. Yeah. So I done basically DC'd Borstal. Then for the fray and malicious wounding, I got sentenced to prison. And that was when I was just turned 21, and nearly for a few years leading up to 21, I was often on remand for 3, 4, or 5 months of the year for piss-arsing around and getting myself nicked. And so that was it,
Tell us what was your parents' reaction to that first time that you were arrested?
Their reaction, I can't really remember their reaction. I think. So some of the time my mum would come with us to court, and obviously she didn't like it that we were getting nicked, but with 9 kids, it's like they can't control us. So you're but it's not like the whole family weren't getting into trouble. My older brother had been arrested a few times. My older sister had been arrested. My older 2 sisters had been arrested a couple of times, but then they grew out of it, when they grew up a bit, and my other brother Coleman that passed away, God bless him. He ended up he was put into care, and so I think even when he's put into care, maybe even though when they're talking about traumatizing or things, like things like that, when your brothers are getting arrested and the police are coming around your house, because when my dad was coming home drunk, sometimes he'd start trouble on my mum and he'd be shouting and screaming, and the neighbours somehow would call the police. And they would turn up at the door, and they were trying to get my dad out of the flat, but because they couldn't come in at the time. And I remember they'd be saying, "Get him out get him to cross over the threshold of the front door," and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that stuff traumatizes us as kids. And you're seeing your brother getting locked up. My older brother got locked up, and then my other older brother, like Coleman, like I just said, he got put into care homes and all that just for not going to school. And I remember thinking how unjust that was when I was a kid. And even as an adult, it still annoys me that just for not going to school, you could get locked up in a care home and all that, and you haven't broken you haven't committed a criminal offence, really. And so whether that all makes you like anti-authority and all that kind of stuff. it's just like you're just thinking it's just like you against them. You're not. It's like they're the enemy, you know.
Yeah, it makes sense. What was it like going into detention centre for the first time?
And I'd heard about it. It was called a short shock back in the days, and I remember getting off of the van, and there was one of the prison officers was there standing about 20 yards in front of me, and he was a big fat fella, and he said to me, "You better run down to me as fast as you can, and if you don't run as fast as you can you're going to get a kick in the bollocks or something." And I thought, and I seen all the prisoners looking out the window over there, and I thought, I'm not running up as fast as I can to him making a fool of myself. You know what I mean? So I jogged up to him, and he sent me back to the other screw back at the other end or something. And the second time, anyhow, I livened up a bit, and I got in there. And the DC, it wasn't too bad, you know. I think I was in there for about 8 weeks, and it was a lot of physical exercise every day. You're training really hard, you know. And I liked all that. I thrived on it, you know, because I had already been in the army cadet, so I knew all about boxing blankets and going running and keeping fit and training and polishing my shoes and all the rest of it. And so I liked it. Yeah.
Did you keep
And then, you know, sometimes you meet some good mates in there and all that, and you're thinking it's a bit sad to even leave them, you know, but you got to leave them. You're going out, and you got to carry on with your life.
Yeah,
and that was it.
You kept your head down, but obviously, if you were training and you were with pals, it just feels a little bit, I suppose, like a holiday camp to you.
And it is. You're working in it. They would have boring jobs in there. That would be the worst of it. Like you'd be making like chain link fencing, and you're rolling it onto a reel all day long, or packing boxes of soap into boxes and all that. Proper demeaning kind of jobs, and so but you'd be glad to get back into the gym and going running and all that, because I liked keeping fit and so it was good for me, and so it didn't do me no harm. That
the interesting thing that you said there was that you know what, when you stepped up and you ended up in Borstal for the wounding charge, that you were disappointed, and you were in there and you hadn't made any money from it. And was that the eureka moment for you when you realized that, you know, if you were going to be a criminal and you were going to get involved in crime, that you wanted to make sure you made some money out of it? Was that like the eureka moment for becoming a...
it kind of was, yeah, because I thought, what a waste of time going to prison for getting involved in a fight, you know. I thought that is just a complete waste of time for me, and I would hate to be because I've never carried a weapon like a knife, because I've always said to myself I wouldn't want to carry it, because I know if I'm going out drinking and you're in a pub and someone started on you or something like that, and you got a knife and God knows what you're going to do with it, you'll probably end up pulling it out. You could end up stabbing a person. Next thing you're doing a life sentence. And so for me, carrying a weapon is never. I don't use. I'm not interested in that. The only time I carried a weapon was like a firearm to rob banks.
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm going at. It was just about getting the money, you know.
Yeah. What was your first robbery then? And just take us through it. You know, how much planning went into doing that first robbery?
And the planning. It wouldn't take me too long to plan it, you know, like, because like I might spot I spotted a place that I wanted to rob, like I hadn't thought about robbing it first of all, but I would be just taking in all the banks that I see, like, and I say, if I seen a bank, I say, oh, that looks a nice one, and but I would always suspecting that the police are following me, so I might just see it one day, and then a few days later I'm driving past and I'm checking out escape routes, and so because the robbing the bank was the easy part, but you got to make sure you get away with it, you know, otherwise there's no point in doing it. That was like our kind of like our motto, so to speak, and so you would put quite a bit of planning into it. So most of the time, 99% of the time, you would put planning into the robberies, like which way go this way, what would happen if they come that way, or what would you got to check out this way, check out that way, whatever, you know, because you want to get out of there.
Yeah. Was it? Did you have a card marker for many of these jobs? Somebody who would tip you off about, you know, potential, you know, opening times or whatever, or did you do the work yourself? Sit outside somewhere, watch people's watch people's routines, see what time places opened.
Mm.
Is that what you would do?
I would never take any work off of anyone.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't trust anyone to take any work off of them.
Mm.
And because you would never know whether you're going to be set up. And,
Yeah.
So I would always look for the work myself.
Yeah. And you work obviously in a tight team. It's quite a rare event to see two brothers. You know what I mean? Obviously yourself and Sean, you know, working together. How did that come about? I mean, I couldn't imagine you both just sitting there one day and saying, "Do you fancy doing a robbery together?" Was it as simple as that, or was Sean doing a robbery, you did a robbery, and then you realised that you were both at the same game?
Well, there was a few mates of mine that when we used to drink in a pub together in northwest London, and they was all robbing banks, and so it was like and everyone in the pub knew that's what was going on, or like so and it was going on for so long, and so next thing you just end up getting involved in it yourself, you know, and because like if I was doing some building work and I'd lose my job, and next thing your money's going down, and you're saying, fucking hell, like your money's gone down again, and so your mates would be there in the pub. They're not stressed out. They're not having to go to work. They're not getting up at 7 o'clock every morning or 6 o'clock. And every other week they're down at the pub and they got a bundle of money in them £50 notes and Armani suits on or whatever. And you're thinking, what the fuck? I must be doing something wrong. I thought, but even though before I even got into it, I did weigh up the odds, and like I was thinking of getting into it even long before I did, you know. And but I knocked it. I didn't bother getting involved at that time.
Yeah.
And, but in the end, I finally did, and that was it. Once I started, it's like there was no going back, and it's like because you get used to it, and it's like, and because I was used to crime, it's not like I just turned to it all of a sudden. Like I started robbing banks. I turned to crime when I was a young kid, like a teenager or whatever, and so. So for robbing banks, for me, it was just like just one step after the next. It's like you're going to school doing your GCSEs and then you're taking your exams. That's what the armed robbery is like for me. Like the armed robbery is your final exam to see if you're going to pass the test, and so you're doing it, you know, and it's like a battle. It's like you're proving it to yourself as well, you know. It's like to prove to yourself that you've got the balls, that you're gonna go and do it, and that you're clever enough to do it and get away with it. And when you see that you are able to do it, and you're doing it fairly confidently and with apparent ease, because I would say ease, because even though because it takes skill to do it, I suppose, if you're going to be successful at it and to make sure you're getting away all the time. Because like I said earlier, there's no point in doing it if you're going to get nicked, because otherwise this defeats the object, don't it?
Was there an adrenaline rush and an excitement for you when you were doing these robberies?
Sometimes I think to myself, like, I'm not too sure whether I was even getting adrenaline from it. I don't know. You like, obviously, I just wanted the money, and I don't think the adrenaline. Maybe the adrenaline is there when you're going to a job. Because it's a long time ago now as well. I can't really remember, to be honest. But you're just like
yeah.
I can't even remember getting adrenaline rush even on the way to a job. Like it's like you got a heightened sense of awareness, and you're looking out for the old bill all over the place, and like you're checking your mirrors here, there. Like one day, for example, me and Sean was out scouting about in the car, and we had drove about an hour away from our house over in Surrey, and we drove about an hour away from the house. And next thing, we drove down this high street, and we went round a roundabout at the end of the high street. We started coming back through the high street, and next thing we seen a car coming towards us with two fellas in it. And next thing, my brother goes, them two fellas. He goes, that car was parked round the corner from your house this morning. So I started looking at them in the mirror. I started watching them, and I seen they done a right turn. So I knew what they were going to do. They were going to come flying back after us again. But what I flung the car around, and I went after them. And I done the right turn. I went down the same road that they had just gone down. And when I turned into the road, they were just about to come back up towards me. And so they were just about to pull away from the curb, and they let the car kind of roll back into the curb. And so me and Sean drove past them, and we were dead slow, and like we was just as near as I am you to the screen, Steve. That's how close we was to them, and we were just staring at them, and they wouldn't look at us, and they just looked straight ahead. And we goes, that is them, mate, 100%. But we were surprised that day that they was on us, because we had driven up some long roads and there was no sign of old Bill around us anywhere. And we seen them, and that was it. So when we seen them, because that's it, we're off home, you know.
Yeah.
And so we'd go off home, and we might go to the gym, or we would just we might go for a few pints and stay in the pub and go on a session for a couple of days or whatever. and that was it.
Did you always have like a getaway car and then a second vehicle? I mean, were you that well organised, or did you just take a chance and use the one car? You know, how was it for you lads when you were doing these jobs?
Yeah, sometimes you would have two cars, sometimes you would just have one car, and even if you couldn't get a car, sometimes you might even use your own car. And because if you had to use your own car, obviously, of course, it's a stupid thing to do, but if that's how desperate we was at the time and we needed some money, then that's what we would do, you know. And we would just make sure the car's well away from the bank, a couple of 100 yards or whatever, down this road, down that road or whatever, and try. You want to get into the car with no one looking at you.
Yeah. Were you always masked up when you were going in, and were you when you say you were on, what were you usually carrying?
Yeah, we masked up, either bandanas or mostly bandanas and baseball caps or balaclavas, and that would be the main disguise, and gloves.
Yeah. And armed.
When I got arrested and I went to trial and for the robberies, and I seen the prosecution's evidence, they had about 200 photos, 300 photos of robberies in progress in these banks, and on every robbery that the Supergrass Roberts, every photograph that he identified me on, you couldn't tell whether the person was black, white, pink or blue, because you couldn't see my skin, you couldn't see my eyes, because I always kept my head down, and you couldn't see the colour of my hands. And Roberts was saying to the prosecutor, yeah, he goes, that's Vincent Bradish. And the prosecutor goes, how do you know that? How can you be so sure? And they played the video, and he goes, look at the way he walks, look. He goes, and I haven't got a distinctive gait or anything like that. And they'll say, yeah, that's Vincent. And they'll say, well, how do you know it's Vincent? He goes, because he's with Sean. He's always with Sean. And I was in the dock, and I say, this is complete fucking nonsense. How has this case ever come to court? I said, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
and that was the evidence that every photo that they used of me from the robberies. That's how Roberts identified me, just like that. And the judge, when he done his summing up, he goes, members of the jury, he goes, have a look at the photographs and see if they look like the men in the dock. And then basically you've, and I was like, how the fuck can he say have a look at the photographs and see if they look like the men in the dock? The men in the photographs, every time it was me, I had my face covered up. So he should never have been even allowed to say that. And so that was one of the reasons why I was appealing for years, and I wouldn't admit it. I finally admitted it when after I got out, after I'd been out of jail for about 3 or 4 years, I admitted it.
I mean, it's an amazing case, and anybody who's got the time should read up on this. And I mean, I've covered a lot of miscarriages of justice with some of the books that I've written about criminals over the years. Some of the things that really stood out for me, and obviously the guy who turned Queen's evidence was obviously, as you've already mentioned, Stephen Roberts. I mean, I read what you put up online when you put the statement of justice for Vincent and Sean Bradish, and it's an amazing. It's well worth just googling to read it. But some of the stuff that got away with in that court case was shocking, and the general public don't realise this kind of thing goes on. The prosecutor, for example, during his opening speech, said that there was 14 handguns and 11 sawn-off shotguns that had been recovered, but there was no evidence of that at all, was there?
And there was no evidence of that. There was evidence. They're saying all these firearms that was used in these robberies. They're saying that was the evidence. I said, well, yeah, but you can't. How can you say that I said, there's only they only had one firearm in our case. That's the sawn-off shotgun that my brother was arrested with. And when he was arrested with that, they put him on a separate trial before the trial that me and him had. That was called the RNIB trial, where he got arrested outside the RNIB. He was arrested with two or three of his mates, and they were convicted. And so he already doing a life sentence before he came on trial with me. And they brought that shotgun in that he was convicted of. And he goes, this is the shotgun. And I said to my barrister, how can they bring that shotgun in here? That's evidence from the other trial.
Yeah.
And because there was a few firearms had been recovered in that case, the judge in my case had said, he goes, numerous firearms have been recovered in this case. And I shouted out in the court, well, where are they then? Because he shouldn't even be talking about them in this case. That was a complete different case. And it was just one bit of, to me, and what I would say is one bit of corruption after the next in that case, and crookedness, where my own legal team sold me down the river and helped get me convicted. And they made sure that Sean got convicted as well, you know, so they got the two of us convicted. And I complained about that till the day I got out, you know.
Two of the jury members as well had relatives in the police, didn't they? I think one of them was a member of the flying squad, and the other was a copper in the city of London. And I think I think you remember you saying in your statement that the jury foreman, he was at school with a junior barrister that your brother sacked.
That's right. Yeah. He was. I know. Yeah. Well, the fella, there was a youngish fella, and he, because you know, at the beginning of the trial, you're allowed to. They're bringing the jury in, and they ask them questions. The judge said, "Have any of you lot worked for the security services or banking industry? Put your hands up." And there was about 20 of them, 30 of them at the time, and a load of them put their hands up. And I thought, we don't want them lot in here anyway, like they're working in the banking industry. And then there was one guy put his hand up, and he goes, "Yeah, my uncle's in the flying squad." And we are arrested by the flying squad. So he goes, "Well, we don't want him in there." And the judge goes, "Well, do you see him often?" He goes, "No, I don't really see him much." And the judge goes, "Well, that's all right. You can stay where you are then." And like, we used to laugh about it over the years and just say it was just one thing, one calamity after the next. And like I said, and Peter Wilcock, my brother Sean's junior barrister, he was at school with I think it was the jury foreman. And we were saying we didn't want him there either, because for all we know, the jury foreman could have been bullying, what's his name, Peter Wilcock, or he could have been his boyfriend for all we know, and they could have separated, and he's got the hump against him or something. Because, yeah. But they took no notice of our objections, and they went ahead with the trial. And the other one, I can't remember about the City of London policeman. I can't remember whether that's true or.
Yeah,
I just can't remember. If that's what I said at the time, that was definitely the case, because during the case, I was sitting there, I was writing down everything that was going on in the case, because I knew that there was something amiss. And because we had been told, all the time while we was on remand, that we're going to get answers to all our questions when we get to the court. And when we got to the court, our barristers wasn't asking the questions that we wanted them to. So when we started pulling them about it and said, "Why ain't you saying anything?" They goes, "Well, we can't ask these questions." It goes, because of the Police and Crime and Evidence Act, or whatever it was, you're not allowed to ask these type of questions. We goes, "Well, why didn't you tell us that at the beginning?" And we would have got another solicitor that instead of you bullshitting us all the way through, because we was on remand for a year in Belmarsh, and we would have got a new solicitor on the case. So they bullshitted us while we was on remand because they didn't want us to get a new solicitors on board and sack them lot. That was Edward Fale, Bradshaw and Waterson from down the Commercial Road in East London.
Yeah.
And that's what they done to us. And so we was annoyed about that. And then but the case was just one funny thing or one mad thing after the next, like how we had the Italian representing us at appeal, Giovanni Di Stefano from Italy. He was a convicted con man, and he had served 5 years in prison. And then but I met him in the legal room in Belmarsh, and so he took our case on. And as soon as he took the case on, they put me in the high secure unit, and made me a Cat A. And then they moved Sean out of the prison and put him in Whitemore. And so I was asking, "Why am I in here in the unit?" I goes, "Most people come into the unit before the trial." I goes, "I've just been convicted and sentenced, and now you're putting me in here." I said, "What for?" They goes, well, you're banned from seeing Giovanni Di Stefano. We're not letting him into the prison anymore. He's not a solicitor or a barrister. I goes, well, if that's the case, he's took my case on. And I goes, I don't care. I goes, that's who I want. I goes, I don't want to see another solicitor as long as I live, like an English one. I goes, and so that was it. And so they banned Giovanni from their thing. But what it was, Giovanni was, he called himself an avvocato, like an Italian barrister. But I don't think he's got any qualifications in that field. But he managed to get a lot of. He managed to get a lot of high profile cases, and that's what he was after, to give him the publicity. And when he's got the publicity, then any of the criminals, any gangsters or whatever, if they've got a load of money, or people that's doing a life sentence and they've got a lot of money, and Giovanni's taking their case on, he's gonna. He would be the man for people to go to, because he's saying, look, I'm representing this notorious criminal. I'm representing that notorious criminal. And so by him doing that and taking on high-profile cases, it builds up a bit of a thing for him. I can't think of the right word at the moment,
It just builds up his profile. It gives him, it basically helps him back his lie up, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah. But the thing is, he had said he was going to do this and he was going to do that for us. Because my brother Sean ended up representing himself for about 3 days or 4 days, and he wanted Steve Roberts to be brought back into the case so that Sean could cross-examine him, but the judge wouldn't bring him back in. And but Roberts he hadn't answered none of the questions that we wanted. Like during these interviews, the police are sitting there and they're saying, "Oh, Steve, I know this is a silly question to ask, but can you remember the number plate that car was on from 5 years ago?" He goes, "How the fuck can I remember that?" And then that was when the solicitor was with him in the interviews. So they get rid of the solicitor. So there's only the two coppers and Roberts. And next thing, all of a sudden, Roberts can remember everything from 5 years ago. What colour clothing he wore on every robbery, what colour clothing my brother wore, or what colour clothing I wore, what car was used, how much money was stolen, the escape route that was taken. And he had every little detail about every single robbery. And we said, this can't be real. How the fuck is this going on? And we goes, and he's sitting in there, he's doing an interview, he's making 52 interviews without a solicitor. And so that's what it was. And so they basically during the interviews they spoon feed him everything about the robberies, and then they'll say, "Oh, Steve, can you tell us what colour clothing was you wearing on this certain robbery?" And he'll say, I was wearing a black jacket and blue jeans and white trainers." And they'll say, "Well, it's funny you mention that, Steve, because we've got a statement here and it says the robber wore black trainers, white trainers and a black jacket or whatever." And they say, "Have a look at them photos, Steve. Who's it?" And he'll say, "Yeah, that's me." Yeah, he'll say. And me and Sean, like, sometimes we would just be cracking up laughing in the cell because we were saying the absurdity of it. And we said no one in a million years is going to believe this. When they get to court, because you can see that Roberts has just spoon-fed all the information. And so we goes and from looking at his interviews and from what we had discovered in the unused paperwork, we seen that that the police had pulled him in 1995, 5 years before we all got nicked, and they pulled him in for his car had been used on a robbery that morning, his friend's car, and he was still driving it that night. And so because someone had spotted the number plate and give it to the police, when they seen him driving it that night, they tried to arrest him, and they finally did. He pulled out a handgun and threatened to shoot them. And he got bailed for that a couple of days later, and he ended up getting 2 years for threatening to kill the police. And it was weird. From that case there in 1995, we said he's definitely been working for them, but the prosecution in our case would never admit it. And so we couldn't prove it because they're not going to hand over the paperwork. We said we want his interviews from when he was arrested for that offence, for driving the car. And because we now knew from looking at the paperwork that they wasn't relying on, that the number plate had been spotted. So he goes, well, that was why they wanted to pull him up. Because he's in the getaway car, he's still got a handgun on him, he fits the description of the robber. Of course they're going to question him about the robbery. But he only got banged up for threatening to kill the police and drink driving or driving while disqualified or something. So that was the crookedness that we was up against. And so when we see the crookedness that we was up against, we said, well, why should we put our hands up? We said, these are just as big as crooks as anyone. They're letting the robberies go on all over London, is the way we've seen it. Because if the people that was in the Thomas Cooks and the banks and all that knew that these lot were followers, they had us as suspects for years, then they would have arrested. Then I don't think the staff in these premises would have been too happy with the police. And that was the way it was, you know. And so that's how we seen it. Because why should we plead guilty when all this corruption has been going on in the case? If they had came to us years before, we used to say, if they had come to us years before and said and say they arrested me or Sean and they brought us in the station and said, look at all the evidence that we got against you. If you don't turn it in, then and you're going to get nicked for this, that, and the other, blah blah blah. We would have probably knocked it on the head, and that would have been the end of it. But obviously they're not going to do that because they want punish the person for the crimes.
Yeah. Of course, they wouldn't allow Sean to cross-examine the police either, would they, in the trial? I mean, you said he took over his own defence, and they wouldn't allow him to do what he was allowed, you know, what he...
They let him cross-examine Detective Chief Inspector Bob Cummins. He was in charge of the case, and they let Sean cross-examine him, but most of the time he wouldn't answer the questions.
Right.
And when Sean would ask him, he said, "Why ain't you answering the question?" He'll say, "Well, my lord's made a ruling on this. I don't have to answer this question." And afterwards, me and Sean were saying, "How do they know to make a ruling on the question before it had even been asked?" Because this is just fucking ridiculous. It's one thing after the next.
Yeah.
And the copper wouldn't answer the questions, and then the judge would say to him, Judge Forrester, he would say, "Oh, have you got any more questions?" Sean goes, "Well, he hasn't even answered the last one. What's the point in asking any more?" And then when Sean was asking questions, the judge kept on interrupting him, trying to put Sean off track. And he was putting him off track a lot of the time. But we had a lot of the questions written down that we wanted asked. Like we copied the prosecutor, how he ran the case. So we copied it and started doing the exact same thing. We went through the photos the same as he done. And we went through, Sean put the case towards the court the same way as the prosecutor did. And he was doing a good job of it. And he raised plenty of doubt and brought the corruption and put the spotlight on the corruption and all that kind of stuff, and it was looking good for us until my QC, Michael Gledhill, opened his mouth and started undoing all the good work that Sean had done.
I mean,
and that was that, you know.
It just seems as if you were always against a corrupt system, and you were never gonna get out of that, you know, out of that courtroom without a hefty sentence. What was the sentences that you ended up with?
I was charged with I had two offences: conspiracy to rob with firearms and conspiracy to possess firearms. And I got found guilty of both, and I got 22 years on each thing to run concurrent. And Sean had I think he had 4 charges against him, like conspiracy to rob and conspiracy to possess firearms, possession of firearms, and for each charge he got a life sentence. So he got 4 life sentences to go with the 3 that he was already doing from his first case, and I got 22 years. So, and his tariff was about 12 and a half years, 13 years or something like that. And my tariff, doing a fixed sentence, 22 years, I had to do about, I got 2 years knocked off of that in 2007 because I kept on appealing against the sentence, trying to. They were saying, "Oh, you haven't got any grounds," and I said, "Of course I've got grounds. Look at this case. Look at that case." Blah blah blah, and I finally got 2 years knocked off, which wasn't even hardly worth them knocking off, and because you get 2 years knocked off, but it only gets a year out of your sentence.
Yeah.
So and so I got it down to 20 years, and I done about 11 years in the end, 11 and a half years, I suppose, and that was it. And Sean got out just before me, because when I got released, first of all, after 10 years from open prison, I went out and I had a few drinks. And that was in one open prison. And so I was warned for that. And so that went against me. And then when I went down to another open prison, Latchmere House in Richmond, London, I went into that one. And then when I went out on the town one night, it was just like a Christmas tree to me when I seen all the pubs all lit up and everyone standing outside places going in. I thought, I joined them, you know. And I can't remember how I got back to the prison steamed up. And a couple of days later, they kicked me out, and that was it. I went back inside closed conditions for about another year and a half. And after that, I said, I've had enough, you know, because I was sick to death of it.
Which, I mean, were you category A for those first couple of years that you were in?
For the first about 5 years, 6 years, I was cat A, yeah.
How did
and
you
then it's okay. It's not too bad. It's the same as being it's the same as being a cat B, basically, when you're in a high security nick, because Whitemoor's a high security nick, so they've got A's and B's in there, A's and B cats, because the B cats are usually doing long sentences, maybe 10 years and upwards, and so you're basically just treated like an A cat and a B cat. You're in a high security nick. The A cats, obviously, you get searched more than the B cat prisoners do, and if anyone you want to phone, you've got to put their telephone number in and get it cleared by the prison service and that. But yeah, but it's not too bad.
Yeah. Were you somebody who liked to get visits of friends and family, or were you somebody who you were in prison, you did your time and that was it?
No, I used to like it when my family used to come up at least once a month to see me, and my brother would bring my kids up, like bring my son up, and with Sean. My brother would bring his kids up as well, you know, most of the time. My brother or sister would bring them up. And so we had visits nearly every month, most of the time through the sentence, except for the last bit of the sentence that I done when I went back inside after being in an open nick for 18 months. I didn't have no visits there. I was sick of dragging my family up and down the country, you know. So that was it. So I didn't bother with the visits. And I ended up working as a visits orderly, working in behind a canteen. And so I would see the effects of the prisoners' families when they're coming up to visit them and all that. And when you see them all going home and they're all crying and they're all hugging each other and all that, and then you see the prisoners sitting down there afterwards, and and a lot of them, like some prisoners they're down in the dumps after having a visit.
Yeah.
And for me, it was there. I never felt like that. Like, you'd see people when they'd come back on the wing, and like some people, they wouldn't want to talk to anyone or something like that. And but for me, anytime I see my family, I was delighted, and I went back to the wing. I was happy as could be. And I just looked forward to the next one. I said, you'd say, like, all right, we'll see you in a few weeks' time or whatever. And so it's not like they're dead. And that was it. And so I wasn't never down in the dumps after a visit. But when I seen the effect on the prisoners' families and all that, like I said, it kind of brought things more home to me. You know, I thought, what a fucking waste. I thought all this is, and then I thought how the visits are all wrong. How people are just sat down there like that, and they got to sit down, and they've it's just kind of like inhuman, you know. Like, I thought, I don't like the way it was all run with all the visits. The way I seen it, like when I first went into Whitemoor, you was able to, when your family came up to see you and the kids and that, you'd be able to get up and run around with them.
Obviously, you served your sentence and you came out. How have you turned your life around, Vinnie?
Well, when I got released 7 years ago, I was walking along Crookerwood Broadway, and I heard music coming from the pub, the Crown Moran Hotel, and they were playing like Cuban music. And I went in and I found out what was going on, and they were doing Cuban salsa, and that was it. Once I started doing that, I thought, I can't believe this. I thought, for one thing, I said to myself, you know what, you wouldn't want to be back in prison knowing everyone's out dancing and enjoying themselves, you know. I thought, imagine getting sent back to prison, you'd be missing all this fun, you know. And so that was part and parcel of it that helped me to change my life around, because that gave me a social activity to do that didn't involve just going around sitting in the pub all evening and getting steamed up. Because I didn't want to be doing that, because that's what caused a lot of the problems with me. Every time I was always getting nicked over the years, it was nearly all alcohol-related stuff. And so, but even though now I still I'll have a few drinks now, but I don't drink nothing like what I did years ago. I used to just abuse it, you know. I'd be in the pub for hours, or in the pub for 2 days, 3 days on two-day benders and all that. And but so now I've just grown up more, and I've changed my life around. I got into the salsa. And from there, I started learning bachata and like kizomba music, like African music, and is nice music. And so that gave me a social activity to do. And plus, and so now I've been working most of the time since I've been out. And I changed my mind and changed my life around. I started I done a neuro-linguistic programming course with Richard Bandler, who's the co-founder of NLP, and just doing all little bits and pieces. It's like, for me, it seems like it's been like a jigsaw puzzle, putting all the bits and pieces together. There's not one thing has made me change, you know. Like, there's so many different things that's happened. Like, sometime I might be doing something, I think this is another reason why this has helped me to stay out. That's helped me to stay out. This has helped me to stay out. For about 2 years when I got out of the nick, at least 2 years, I used to be thinking, every time I had a nice meal, I used to think, I used to say, because you wouldn't get this in the nick. You wouldn't get this in the nick. You wouldn't get this in the nick. Every time you're doing something nice, you know, and like it reminds you of why it's good to be out, and because you can easily, it's easy for people to just forget about the sad times in there, and you forget about it. You get tied up in all the problems that are out here and all that kind of stuff, and next thing you could end up finding yourself doing the same old thing, drinking and taking drugs or whatever, and next thing you're on a downward slope again. If you're mixing with the negative people, it's helping you to. They might be, if you was like, they would be trying to suggest that you do something stupid or whatever, and so. But I keep away from all my old associates. I don't mix with none of them, and I'm happy enough now. Like, my son is now 22 years old, and for me, like, I wouldn't want to go back in, and I missed enough of his life. I went away when he was about 2, and so and plus, so all that kind of stuff. The family helps keep me out from to be here with the family, knowing that I can just pop down to see them whenever I want. Go and see my mum, who's 82 years old, and all that. Like, if I went back into the nick, if I went in for a serious offence, then I'd come out, my mum would probably be gone, and life moves on, you know. But even a few years ago, I ended up getting a load of parking fines, parking offences and all this, and from about £200 or £300 worth of parking offences, they all gathered up to about £2,000 or something, because I said I weren't going to pay them, because I thought it was all just so unjust. And but in the end, I said to myself, well, if you don't pay them, Vin, I goes, you're just going to end up going into the nick, and I'm going to come back out, and I'm going to be in a worse position than I went in. I would have lost my accommodation. I'd lose my girlfriend. I'd lose my job. I said, fucking hell, you might as well pay it. So I ended up paying them about £2,000, and as sickening as it is getting parking offences and all that stuff, and now I just try to keep aware of all these things that don't stress me out or whatever. Plus, I've got into all like more personal development, like even just watching stuff on YouTube, personal development stuff, Eric Thomas and Les Brown, and now there's other people that I first started listening to them when I got out of the nick, and they would motivate me and make me believe, like, oh yeah, if you want to go for your goals, you can achieve anything, and keep going for it. And it's from watching all stuff like that. Then next thing I done an NLP practitioner course. I paid £2,000 to do that, but I didn't care less. I thought it's to help me think better. Then if it's going to help me think better to stay out of jail and don't be making the same mistakes that I did when I was younger, then it's money well spent. And doing all stuff like that, personal development stuff. I qualified about nearly 2 years ago as a hypnotherapist, and so I got into that, and I was doing that. And in September, I'm going to do a firewalk instructor course, and so I'll be teach people how to walk across burning hot coal with barefooted, or how to walk across broken glass barefooted, and breaking bricks with your hands, and just by using your focus and being focused, and just to show that if you focus, what can be done, you know, because when I read about this firewalk stuff that Anthony Robbins used to do, and when I read about it when I was in the nick, I thought to myself, wow, I'd love to do that. And then a couple of years went past or whatever. When I was out here, a few years went past, and next thing I seen the opportunity. I seen it online, firewalk instructor. I thought, that's it, I've got to go. And it's quite expensive. I think it's costing me about £1,500, I think. And but I said, I don't care how much it costs. I said, I've got to do it. And even just for myself, I just want to do it just for myself. The same as the hypnotherapy and everything. First and foremost, I'm just doing it just for me, you know, to prove that I can do these things. But the firewalk thing will be something else, you know. that would change my whole mindset and hopefully put me on another level again, and hopefully for the future to start teaching people how to do that. People that have got negative beliefs about themselves or thinking that they can't do this, they can't do that. Go, if I can get companies like businesses and start teaching them, look, and charging them, obviously, and you're going to charge them how to. I think it would liven up a lot of staff that's in these companies.
Yeah.
And,
I did a fire walk for the Stroke Association a few years back. I managed to get one little burn on my foot, but I did it. I raised 1,200 quid for the Stroke Association. And it's great, eh? It is mind over matter, though. That's what they teach you, and it's a good thing to get into. So good luck with that. Just a little thing about what you mentioned there. You mentioned, you used to go on these benders. You used to be out 2 or 3 days sessions. Is that probably because the money that you were making was dirty money? You find it. I think a lot of people don't realise when you do robberies, it's the easy part's the robbery, which is what you said earlier. But it's actually spending the money's the hard part.
No, spending the money isn't the hard part. No, that's not. You may have misunderstood me there. I was saying, no, getting away from the robberies was the main thing. Like, I said, the robberies were easy to do.
Yeah.
But maybe they became easy for us to do because it's not just because we've done the robberies, it's because the upbringing as well that I had. And like, so I was used to. It's like I was used to surveillance kind of. Or anti-surveillance kind of. I had an awareness, and like from just going around shoplifting and everything. I was even from the army cadets. I learned anti-surveillance stuff. Like if you was going over hills, don't walk over the brow of a hill. Just go down and stay in the valley and this, that, and the other. And so I had a bit of knowledge of I was aware of these things and I suppose if you've been ducking and diving all your life, it's like it becomes like second nature to you, and so that's why we was able to do so many of them and get away with it.
Yeah.
Even though enough times we've seen the old Bill following us, but for one reason or another they never caught us on a job, and they caught my brother Sean as they was about to rob that security van that was meant to turn up that day, and they arrested him. I was arrested while I was driving down the road with a girl that I know, and that was 7:30 in the evening, and I was just arrested then. So I was never caught with any firearms or anything like that. But that was that,
How's Sean doing now?
Sean's doing great. Yeah, his son got killed 4 years ago, and so he's had to get over that and deal with that, and but he's in a good place to be dealing with it. Funnily enough, he's in Gartree, the therapeutic wing that was there, and he was in there. He'd done 3 years on that wing, and they're unraveling him right from when he was a child, and probably whatever they do on them therapeutic nicks or them therapeutic wings, helping them to discover why they got involved in crime right from the beginning. And so he's done a lot of that therapy, and talking to him now, he's just got a degree in criminology and social sciences, and he's now going for his honours. And I take my hat off to him because I think it's amazing that he's been able to do all that. Because from what he's had to put up with, like going back into the nick after getting released 7 years ago when I did, 8 years ago, he got released, and then to go back in again, do another lump of bird, and then his son to get killed, and it's not like he was educated. None of us done anything at school, and we've only read he'd only read a few books, and so for him to get his degree and now to be going for his honours it's like a miracle, mate. It's brilliant, and like if you hear him now, the way he speaks, and he can put an argument together and hold it and come back to a certain point, and it's always positive. Every time that he rings me up, it's always positive and uplifting, and he never gets off the phone without quoting some scripture, and it's good. It's a blessing to see,
Is the light at the end of the tunnel for Sean? How long has he got left?
Yeah, well, his time is up. His tariff was he got another 8-year tariff,
yeah,
and he's done that now. So he's doing well, and hopefully he'll be out within the next year.
Fantastic. And I mean, that would be a great achievement. You know, well done to both of you, really, for turning your lives around. And the boys, the boy who left school with, with no interest and no qualifications and on a life of crime has turned his life around. And it's a success story for you, Vinnie. And, I applaud you for what you've done. What message would you give to any youngsters watching this who are thinking or are involved already in a life of crime?
For them, I would just say getting involved in a life of crime, it's not worth getting involved in, because where do you stop? Where do you stop? Are you going to stop when you kill someone? Or are you going to stop when you've ended up doing 10 or 15 years in a nick for robbing banks, or 20 years, or go in jail for 20 years, 20 to 30 years for a life sentence for murder? Is that when you're going to stop? It's too late to stop then. They might as well just stop. Don't even start, because all you had to, out here, you're living in Britain. Look, you've got access to everything over here. You've got access to, you can get to the college for free. You can do a fucking open university course. You can do it all for free. You go to loads of other countries in the world. You can't get these things. So you've got the opportunity. Everyone's got the opportunity over here to better themselves, and get all they've got to do is get their head down and stick their head into the books. And get themselves a degree, and within a few years you'll have your degree. Few years are going to pass anyway, 3, 4 or 5 years. I've just started my degree in criminology, and it's going to take me 5 years part-time to do it. And I've kept on putting it off all these years, but Sean has persuaded me to go for it. And it's by seeing him getting his degree, and it's encouraged me and motivated and inspired me to do it. And so I'm going to go for it. And if I can go for it and Sean has gone for it, then I met plenty of people in the nick with their heads screwed on, and some of them I'd say, "What the fuck are you doing in here?" I said, "You'd meet some guys that could make poems, they could write songs and everything." And you said, "What are you doing in here, man?" Because I know why I was in there. I wasn't able to get any money any other way, So, but when I see these people, maybe it's the same for loads of them. I know we all think, "Oh, we can't get no money any other way. I just want it quick." I knew where the money was. The money's in the bank. I'm going to go and rob the bank. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really bring happiness, because for me, all it done is just you go out on the piss with it. You're taking drugs with it. You might be cheating on your missus because you've got more money. You're out spending more. People are hanging on to you because you've got money. You've got false friends. It's just a load of negativity. You might as well just get yourself stuck in the books. That's what I would say to any of the youngsters. Get your head stuck in the books and do some courses, do some free, because you can and then become anything you want. You can get yourself a degree in bloody engineering, anything. If you get yourself a criminal record, you're going to get fucked for the rest of your days, because it's going to be held against you. You can't get decent jobs. So that's what I would say to them: get their heads stuck in a book, and apply for this course, apply for that course, and save up the money and do what they can, because time passes. Time passes quick before you know it. Look, I've been out of the nick 7 years, and it's only now that I'm just going for a degree now. And I've been saying for the last few years I'd love to get a degree. And my brother Sean, because he's done the therapy and all that kind of stuff, he said to me, "What's holding you back, Vin?" And all this stuff. And he's helped me to find out more about myself. And so it's brilliant. He's like, the way I see it now, I said he's like the family counsellor now. And I think sometimes there's a few of us in our family, we need counselling with the things that's happening in our lives as well, like the traumas, family dying. My brother Coleman died of cancer. Then a year later, my other brother died in a car crash, and all this kind of stuff. And when that happens to you, you just go off the rails. But everyone in our family didn't turn to crime, but I was already involved heavily in crimes, doing these robberies. So I just carried on doing what I was doing, and it's just like you just lost interest in life. So you're ruining your life. You're going on a downward spiral, and it's only going to come to a stop, God knows where, whether you're going to kill someone or someone's going to kill you, and or you're going to end up doing life in prison, or you're going to get killed and you're going to be down in a cemetery with the rest of them. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to fix up and just stay away from the negative people, and just go for your goals,
It's great advice, Vinnie, and I think if any kids are watching, they should listen to what you've got to say. And I think, you're a testament, to what you're saying as well. But you've turned your life around, and you know, me personally, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast with such a positive message, and just want to wish you, Sean, and all your family all the very best, and good luck with your degree, mate.
Okay, thanks a lot, Steve. It's been a pleasure doing the interview with you as well. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, good luck with your book. And you have got, you're obviously, I know you're working with Noel Razor Smith. There's a book coming out at some point. I know there's been a little delay on that for legalities, which is often the case with those kind of books. There's another book you mentioned, which has got the Irish heritage. Which one's that people can find online?
That's a friend of mine, Andy Nobloods. And I've also been working on my own book over the last couple of years, but it's slowed down, and I want to get back into that. You know, I was hoping that when Noel's book had come out about what I'd got convicted of, I would have earned some money from that, and that would have inspired me more to focus more on writing my own story. But that's been held up. So whatever happened, that's for whatever reason. That's I just look on the bright side, and I look on the positive side. I say everything happens for a reason, and so I just got to continue with my own book and get it published, and so people can see my life story and how I've changed my life around, and hopefully and maybe make some more books from that. How to change people's lives around, you know, because that's what I'm going to be lives around. Going to parties, like showing people how to do this firewalking, going to business meetings or wherever I can get work. Doing that, teaching people how to walk across burning hot coal and the broken glass. That's what I intend to do for the future, to help people change their life around.
Great stuff, mate. Well, thanks very much. Good luck with it, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon.